Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com, a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casaza in Beaver Stadium. I was one of the 110,742, the largest audience to see West Virginia play a football game and to see Penn State ranked seventh in the country make it interesting late. Not in any sort of like competitive aspect, but maybe in a salty aspect that we can get to. They win 38-15. West Virginia, I think long story short here, began to unravel a bit in the second half. Penn State began to settle in, take control, and it just got away from a team that is overmatched under man a lot of the one-on-one battles there. But 0-1, Chris, for the third straight season. That has never happened to a WVU football coach before. It has happened 3 times in school history and not since 1959, 1960, 1961. But that is the history that Neal Brown wrote today. Did not want to do that. Hope to write other history, but he closes the book on this chapter and goes back to Morgantown confident in his team.
Not discouraged. I think he said that several times. Zero discouraged, I believe, was his first quote in there. And let's start here.
Let's start right there. Is that good? Like, I mean, it's 14-7 at the half, and they get a chance to, they parry a shot at the start of the third quarter where Penn State after they missed the 2 field goals, they didn't do anything with that first drive out of the half, and then you get the ball and you got a chance. I mean, I understand you don't go on the road as a 21-point underdog and expect to win. Maybe you hope to win, but you have a chance. I think you can be discouraged that you played a good enough first half, but you never got better and closer, even though you had some opportunities. I wonder if he's just being overly optimistic and maybe as much of a cheerleader as a head coach.
Okay, so you answered the question I was going to ask you, because I was going to say, are you zero discouraged after seeing this game? Because that, and I tweeted this, and it had the feel of, I believe, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where the defense was, it wasn't the best in the world. I know there was a couple years where the defense was great, but I think it was 2 years ago where they were good. They were good. But like in the games, they would just eventually get worn down, and they would give up more points than maybe you thought they should have, or it didn't feel like they were giving up that many points. And today kind of felt the same way. And it would just felt like, hey, the defense got to stop. Like, sometimes it was a drop touchdown, a missed field goal, but it was still like, hey, the defense is not the reason West Virginia is losing right now. And the offense is getting another opportunity and another opportunity and another opportunity, and they're just not converting on it. And then that final, right after halftime, where West Virginia gets the defense gets a 3 and out, West Virginia gets the ball, and it's like, here you go and tie it up, and they go -1 yards, and it just felt like that was it. Like the defense was just like, we're giving you all we could possibly give at this point. And from that point on, Penn State's drives were touchdown, field goal, touchdown, touchdown.
Yeah, I want to come back to that last touchdown in a minute here. But to your point, I think it's hard to bring this team in here on this night. And it was awesome here, man. Like, I'd never been here before, and I don't want to be like, oh man, what a cool place. But it was a really nice environment, like stadium rocking, crowd definitely into it. They sing the entire time. Like, anytime there's a break, it's all chanting, all singing. It feels like it's an important thing here. And I'm sure that buoyed the home team and probably did some good to West Virginia too. Like, hey, this is a big time opportunity for us, but it's also a big time stage. Just make sure we're up to the task. And never really got there. I mean, the first series on defense, they have a bust. Then it just goes poorly right away. And then despite that, like, I think you can feel better about staying in the game and really kind of seeing their plan through to the locker room, which was hang in. And when it goes to the fourth quarter, then the pressure's off of West Virginia onto Penn State, and then see what happens. And just never got there because that third quarter that's, the penalties started to pop up, the mistakes start to pop up, some odd decisions start to pop up. And I think it's hard to be discouraged that your team can't beat number 7 Penn State. I think it's maybe a little bit easier to be discouraged that you had a lot of things go the way you needed it to. You didn't get turnovers or penalties or miscues, but you didn't commit them. And the other team wasn't running and hiding from you. They were not outclassing you. So you kind of succeeded in being on the field and being worthy and making this a game when a lot of people didn't think that was going to be the case. And the fact that you couldn't do anything with that in a year where you have to make some leaps, some strides at the quarterback position, at the skill positions, in the secondary, I think you can be discouraged, at least for a night that didn't happen, because if one or two of those things happen, if you take a stride here or there, all of a sudden that gap doesn't get too big in that second half and you're right there, then who knows what happens. I think that's a fair assessment. I don't think you bail on the season and sell all your stock because you couldn't win on the road in front of 110,000 people on a Saturday night. But I think for a night you could be discouraged that you had a chance and you didn't get done what you intended to do the way you wanted to do it.
And feel like we're coming back to a couple similar conversations that we had after the season opener last year. Um, Last year, obviously a little more heartbreaking for WVU fans, and it was a game where West Virginia literally had the game. It was theirs to win, and they kind of gave it away. Um, you come into this one, and Neal Brown says afterwards, you know, basically that's the most talented team they'll face all season. Um, are we, as media folk and prediction specialists, going to fall into that trap again and think, hey, it's not going to get any tougher than it's already been for this team, and maybe they can come out of it, just fine down the road?
Yeah, I wasn't convinced that Pitt was great last year after that game. And part of that was because like they kind of got pushed around at times by West Virginia. I didn't think that West Virginia was that great. But different animal here. Like that is an extremely talented defense, but man, they were fast and they had waves of people they could run in. I think that's a fair assessment. This is going to hold, and we've talked about how brutal September is going to be. We sure about that? TCU loses as we're talking right now. Wyoming is beating Texas Tech in Wyoming, but like I think people thought those were juggernauts and big bads, like the defending national runner-up and a team that's 4-0 against Neal Brown. That doesn't really matter because who knows? So I think that you could say this might have some value. Like, listen, they're going to look like $1,000,000 next week because the team across them is not going to look at all like Penn State. And Duquesne will probably be vanquished pretty early. And you'll get guys who get a lot of confidence going up. And that's dangerous for Pitt when they come to town because they're going to feel a lot better than they do right now. They're going to say, you know what? Played all right with Penn State for, I don't know, 35, 45 minutes. Boat race Duquesne because we made that significant week 1 to week 2 stride. We'll have no problem with Pitt, or we should be on the field with Pitt, or Pitt might be playing catch up with us, right? I think you can expect that type of a verve of confidence. So I'm not ready to change my season long prediction again because I goofed up on that last year where I thought that by, the night of the game, the afterglow in Heinz Field, I was like, this team may be better than I thought. I didn't see that tonight. I did not see the light bulbs and the things that make me say, okay, this team has turned the corner. It's made the difference here. It has found that extra gear. So I really can't get there yet, but I do think there's a value in parts of this game saying pretty good. And if not for this, then maybe it's a different story. I think there is some value there, but that's going to come across in coaching and how that's served, but also how that's digested by the players too.
All right. Immediately after the game, I don't even think you've had a chance to see this on the site. As you post game, you went over there for the Neal Brown press conference. I did stock up, stock down. Immediate thoughts on some position groups and some one aspect of the game. Without looking, what's your one position group player, whatever that is, a stock up and one that's a stock down after one game, like where it was compared to, or where it is compared to what you might have thought a week ago?
Player, probably Trey Lathan. Koba had a great game, but I think people thought he was going to be like that. But Trey Lathan played a lot, and I think he looked the part and played the part. That's good. Position, defensive line. I don't know that the gap between their one and I think they played 7 or 8 guys tonight. I'm not sure it's a great gap between the first guy and the last guy, but it's pretty good. And they got good snaps out of people tonight, so that was important to me. Conversely, on offense, I don't know what I feel better about. I kind of like some things about Cole Taylor. That was interesting to me. I did keep an eye on that, but my stock down, Chris, is going to be receiver. They're not fast, and they didn't have EJ Horton. I never saw Gallagher out there on the field, and they just did not have a robust threat out there that could stretch the field. Like they had Jeremiah Aaron out left. I didn't see Jashawn Polk play maybe a handful of snaps. He's supposed to be a guy who can move, but Carter and Bram and Preston Fox. And I don't know what Traylon Ray's deal is yet. I know he's tall and he can run, but it wasn't a great night for him to display that stuff against that secondary. But I don't know where their game breaking speed is. Never saw Jaheim White. Like there are these X factors, these boost guys on offense. And again, didn't see White, didn't see Gallagher, no Horton. Where's the juice coming from that's supposed to turn small plays into big gains or simple things into greater opportunities for the offense? I don't know where that is right now.
My 3 goals piece on the countdown, number 3. One of them was to get some big plays, 40 plus yards. West Virginia has ranked near the bottom in the country every single year since Neal Brown arrived. Prior to that, top 25, I think every year except for 2000, the Paul Millard, Ford Childress, Clint Trickett carousel year, and they were like 34th that year. Every year since Neal Brown has been here is in the hundreds out of 130 teams. 0 plays of 40 yards today, and only 1 play over 23. I think the second biggest play was 23 yards. So the biggest play was that 37-yard pass to Carter. That was it.
Would have
No.
been another one, but Green just whiffed on a throw in the second quarter. I think it was there,
Mhm.
but just didn't connect it. And then there was I think one in the middle of the Traylon Ray that might have been there. He would have had to do some running after, but it was open for sure. And Green's kicking himself about that. But yeah, I think that's a problem for sure. Are you discouraged or disappointed that we didn't see a Gallagher, a Jaheim White? I'm not saying they're the difference in the game, but we talked to coaches and players about this. And we're going to get in the ball, or we're going to get these guys the ball in space. We're going to give them a chance. But like, I don't know, man. Flip it at to Preston Fox so you can flip it to Preston or to Cortez Bram so you can flip it to Garrett Green. That doesn't seem like the splash play they should be trying to manufacture.
Are we going to get into the 4th and 2, bringing the cold backup QB off the bench,
Don't want to get there.
motion him in?
I want to get there. I'm just like I mean, is this an overreaction? You think first game? Like I do think that that's a good secondary. I'm not sure it's all world or whatever. It might be the best they see, but like I was really kind of left wanting more vertically or at least stretching or okay, we can't do something. I know screen pass is the devil for some people, but is there a way to get these guys the ball in space and make something happen? I just don't know if maybe White's not ready yet, maybe Gallagher's not ready yet, but boy, those are 2 freshmen I had high hopes for. I don't know what Horton's going to do, but I don't know how you fix that unless you play those guys because Fox is going to get faster. Carter's a big guy and he's got some speed. He's a good athlete, but I'm not sure he's that over the top game breaker or a guy who can catch one or run away from people. I'm curious about that because they're going to need that element because I'm not sure that Green is a guy who's going to sit back and pick defenses apart and march it down the field over and over and over without something happening to him or the defense doing something to him it's going to be 3rd and 9 at some point, I think.
With you completely on that one.
Okay. I have not read your stock up and stock down. I did retweet it and I got the warning about, do you want to read the article first? And I said, no, just repost this. Yeah, let's go. The 4th down, which I feel bad. I had to ask about it. No one asked about it. I was like, I guess I'll do it. And I feel like Brown just kind of like bowed his head right away. Like he's like, I knew you were going to ask this, but I just wondered if they were trying to steal one there and it just didn't go well. It fooled absolutely nobody, which I think was part of the design too. I had to go back and I'll have to watch the tape, Chris, but I believe that Brown said something along the lines of that we knew they were going to go cover 0, which means they're going to see that and just blitz everybody, which means you don't account for the quarterback, who in that case is Green, who's then as a receiver, which means you do account for him. And he got swallowed up by a blitzing linebacker. So, but he said that Green just didn't get outside far enough, and if he gets outside that guy, he can take in the flat or he can go vertical, and then Marco's got a better pass, but. What's curious to me is that Green said that just it didn't work out like they saw on tape, which means that they were saving that for a spot, I would assume, and that was the time they chose to deploy it. It was 4th and was it 3 or 5?
Oh, that play was 4th and 2.
2. Oh boy.
Yeah, that was my thing. Was it at 4th and 3, 4th and 5, you got to bring in the run pass option, but 4th and 2, man. Mm, mm, mm.
I credit him for trying something there. His answer was, we were just trying to have some fun, which that's a weird intersection of the game to have some fun, but I just don't think he had a great answer for that, which makes the question hard to ask and hard to answer. I mean, he can just say we tried it and it stunk. What can I tell you? That's never been his way to do things. I get that. That's fine. But not what I would have dialed up there for sure. I just don't know how you can run that. I mean, that like they rehearsed on the bus ride over here. It just did not look crisp. And when Penn State saw the backup quarterback motion into the backfield, all the arrows pointed at, okay, get this guy, and we're going to get there in a hurry and make this happen fast. And they did.
So something else I said in that stock up, stock down. Maybe it was controversial. I want to get your thoughts on this. The secondary. I said it didn't feel like they were as egregiously bad as they were last season. And then, I got thinking about it more, and then you look at the stats, and you're like, oh my God, they were the 22 of 30 for 332 yards with 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. And I was like, were they as bad as they were last year? And I just forgot, or I thought they were worse last year. Mike, what are your thoughts on the secondary?
Not deep. And Marcus Floyd doesn't make the difference there, but they just didn't play a lot of people. I would think Burks played every snap tonight. I'd have to go. I'll look at the snap count in the morning, but he played a lot. Wilson played a lot. Um, Bishop played a lot. Wilson Lamp played a lot. I don't think Ruffin played much. So they didn't have that, and they didn't get taxed. I don't think that the guys that they were chasing around were like super sprinters or just athletically better than them. So that maybe wasn't too hard. That was a lot of snaps in the first game for a lot of these guys, and we'll know more when we actually see all the data on that. So I'm not sure if that's not their best. Again, that's the problem where depth is. If that's not their best, and then okay, why are they out there? And then can they be beaten out? So that's going to be something that they're going to have to push and compete for. And you hope the next week you get some guys out there that didn't. But the communication, like they talked about how they dumbed it down and did things and like, all right, let's not do this, let's not do this. I don't know what happened the first touchdown pass, but it looked like play action and maybe Wilson really bit on it. And then there was nobody deep to help Burks. But Brown also said at the game that they had it one-on-one, they had it covered, and the guy fell down. So maybe he's supposed to run with the guy. I mean, the receiver did motion from the outside inside, so that maybe becomes his responsibility. Wilson Lamp just kind of fans out so he doesn't give up a wheel rat or something to a tight end or a running back out there. And Burks is supposed to run with that receiver and just didn't. And sometimes you lose that one-on-one. The trouble, though, Chris, is that on the second touchdown pass to Keandre Lambert-Smith, I'm pretty darn sure it was the exact same play. And if not, it was almost identical conceptually, including the motioning in and having the defense compact in the secondary. And then they just get totally confused there. And that's concerning because they were supposed to remove those elements. That stuff that was problematic and would cause them trouble with communication in the back end. And it popped up. And when it came to having to run with their receivers, they didn't run with the receivers. They got beat on crossing routes and square ends and things like that a couple of times tonight. And then by the end of the game, they kind of look a little defeated toward the end and just didn't want to cover and tackle. And that last touchdown pass was way too easy for something that should not have been that easy.
For the record, the Lambert Smith play, both touchdowns, he certainly ran the same route. Same thing. Like you said, he motioned outside in and then kind of like a skinny post that just kind of kept fading. Obviously on the second touchdown, he's a little closer to the end zone, so didn't quite have the running room that he did on the first one. Well, I mean, let me rephrase that. He didn't have to run as far. And had a defender on the first one. The second one, he just kind of waltzed in, was wide open, and I saw him motioning in. I saw the cornerback. Forgive me for not remembering who was involved. I don't need to be, you know, specifically calling people out right here, but the cornerback, released him essentially like, all right, I'm releasing this guy, and going to after that is somebody in the next line is supposed to pick him up, but then you see Lambert Smith run right past that safety, and then there's a third safety, and he runs right past him, and it looked like a linebacker, and you're like, wow, he just ran through four different defenders, and all of them released him to the next guy, and the guys that are up close didn't, no, bumping him or anything like that, no resistance anywhere, and he just kind of ran free, and that was again one of those moments where I was like, all right, I think the defense they haven't given up, but it's just kind of worn on them that they're still out here on the field.
Yeah. Yeah. Positives before we get to the James Franklin Neal Brown duel. Um, I was kind of impressed by how they were able to get pressure. I think that's one thing we always worry about with the Bandit or defensive end. Can they get pass rush? Because they really had to, especially that quarterback tonight, who Drew Rattler handled it really well, but they got to him a couple times and made him throw it away or made him make passes earlier than he wanted to, whether it was Koba or Lathan or Tomiwa Durajayi or Sean Martin. I mean, they got to him and got in the backfield sometimes. And that's a pretty good offensive line. Like the left tackle is very good. Their center is very good. Their right guard is back, I believe. They lost their left guard to retirement this week, so they're changing some things there, but some good players up there. Um, and the running backs are enough that you sometimes you got to cool a little bit when you pass rush, and the quarterback was mobile, so I'm sure after a while that got in the heads of the pass rush, but they were there a couple times, and that's encouraging to me because that's a question mark for them for sure. That would be one takeaway that I think is a small thing that could become bigger here. And again, you don't want to put too much in this first game because the opponent, the venue, all that stuff. But I think that's transferable. They may have something there they could build on that I wasn't sure about, but now you might lean in and look for that to be a little bit better, a little bit sooner than you thought. Anything stand out for you?
I'm with you on both parts of that. And you mentioned specifically Trey Lathan earlier, and um, the linebacking core was solid today, very solid, and it was one of my biggest concerns because it was like, yeah, hey, Lee Kova is going to be good, and he was 13 tackles, almost twice as many as the next player on the team. Got in the backfield, got to hit a couple hits on the quarterback. He seemed to be all over the place, and that's basically expected from him at this point. But Trey Lathan, again, like Will linebacker, you're like, man, what are they going to do there? There's nobody that has experience, and it didn't seem like Trey Lathan was overwhelmed with the situation, overwhelmed with the um, the crowd or the intensity. And he certainly didn't seem overmatched with the talent on the other side of the ball either, which is a great sign for West Virginia moving forward. So I think that was a big one. And also defensive line. Um, AJ Jackson said during fall camp, hey, we got some, I don't know if we got game breaker, however he phrased it, but we got a solid group. That concerned me. I was like, hey, man, it's nice that it's solid, but really want like a playmaker on defensive line. And I don't know, there was like, big sacks, too much going on. I know Tommy Durajaye had one, but I did feel like they were solid, and it showed, and it ended up with very solid results, turning, maybe one of the better run games in the country into a pretty mediocre showing for Penn State.
Yep. Finally, Jimmy Buffett passed away Friday evening. Today's the day after. I want to talk about salt, 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 salt. Um, little beef here, little James Franklin, Neal Brown. Whoa, explosion. You hear that? I'm okay. People want to talk about this, I guess. The going for it on fourth down, the scoring a touchdown on fourth down, Neal Brown's explanation afterwards. You've already written about this here. What do you see? What do you think? What do you think?
In the moment, I was like, "Oh, this is odd." Like 4th and 3. I mean, I almost, do you really want to kick a field goal there? Like, is that, what if we get into the whole sportsmanship thing? So I was like, hey, just get that first down, and then you can kind of sit on it. But there was no sitting on it. My thing has always been, if you have your backups in and you want to be a good coach, you run your offense. And he put his back. I don't know if like the whole first team, the whole offense was backups in there. Obviously, they switched quarterbacks, and you want to get them some reps. And for that reason, I'm okay with that. Like, still trying to run like a regular offense with your backup quarterback. I did think it was a little strange after they got that first down on the 4th and 3, and they're inside the 10. And it's like all you have to do is kneel twice. Like they're out of timeouts at this point. West Virginia's out of timeouts at this point. Just kneel twice, game's over. And instead they're like not just like, hey, let's just run it up the middle, but now we're gonna run back up, rush back up to the line to run another play to try to get it out there. Eh. And yeah, Neal Brown after the game, somebody sent me that. What was that tweet from that Twitter personality drill? It was
Oh,
like
yeah.
another thing. I'm not mad. Don't put in the newspaper that I got mad. I'm not mad. And it's kind of what this felt like.
Yeah. 2017, Penn State's playing Georgia State. It's 56 nothing. Um, the Georgia State kicker's on to kick a field goal, and James Franklin calls a timeout, and he gets called out afterwards because the guy comes back in the field and misses the kick, and someone asks him after the game about it, and Franklin says, "Well, we didn't have our threes out there. We had, we don't rehearse that. We want to get it right." But who cares about you getting your third team or your personnel right on PAT field goal block late in the fourth quarter of a game, we're in 56 nothing. I think that's maybe just him sometimes, that maybe he uses the game to do this stuff, or maybe he's trying to make a point. Like, didn't want Georgia State to kick a field goal just to snap a shutout. It was 56 nothing. I think he wanted to get the shutout, and like Brown's calling timeouts. frankly, that's like a rule too. Like if you're going to keep playing, we're going to keep playing, and sometimes you have to do that because I don't know. You call timeouts. What goes around comes around, Chris. And then we heard that later on because Brown was asked about it and said those things, what goes around comes around, and that'll come around sooner or later. I don't know when. I'm pretty sure he's thinking August 31st, 2024, because that's when Penn State visits Morgantown to start next season. So that'll be fun. I have not read the Penn State clippings or if James Franklin addressed it, but I'm sure that that is going to get some life. Not asked about after the game and not discussed until right now. I did not see this until because I was on my way down to the post game. I missed this, but ring around the rosy, Chris.
That has been every response from every Penn State person on Twitter so far was about the comments from Neal Brown about James Franklin was, something to the effect of, weren't you doing ring around the rosy on 2-point conversions like 30 seconds earlier? So it's
Can't
being
believe
talked about.
it worked. A shovel pass, no less, too.
Yeah.
I'd like to know the backstory on that one. All right. Well, that's it for us here. I'm back to my hotel up and early tomorrow. We'll be back with the regular assortment of Sunday stuff. My three things I think. Going to kind of review some of the post game that we did not get into great depth on the site or in the podcast tonight. Get you some snap counts, and then Chris, we'll have some power rankings from you, and who knows how this shakes out. But what do you have up your sleeve for the first Sunday of the football season?
Yeah, we're gonna have some silver linings up in the morning, some PFF grades. I will not be doing the things the plays that change the game because according to ESPN's Gamecast, I'm pretty sure like it never dropped below 85%. Like even when it was 14-7 and West Virginia had the ball in the second half.
Hmm.
So no need to really run that article. But we'll see if any recruits have some interesting things to say. We'll have those updates and then the Q&A thread for our VIP members to hop in and ask some questions for us about this game, about what's going on moving forward. And then I guess we'll get ready to record that podcast too. So if you're listening to this, VIP member, get ready to ask those questions. If you're not a VIP member, 50% off VIP right now. Go over to the site, sign up, or go ahead and hop on a monthly subscription and you can get Paramount Plus right away with it.
Lots going on, lots to talk about, lots to write about. We'll be back at it before you know it. Until then, I am Mike Kazaza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.